All right, today we're talking about an absolute legend of military aviation, the C-17 Globemaster. You've probably seen it. It's that workhorse flying into war zones and disaster areas all over the globe. But what you might not know is that for decades, this plane's own existence was the disaster zone. I mean, just look at this shot. It really tells you everything you need to know about the C-17. But this isn't just the story of a cool revolutionary plane. No. It's the story of how that very plane had to fight for its life against politicians, rival companies, and its own technical failures for years, long before it ever saw a battlefield. So where does this whole saga begin? Well, we have to go back to the middle of the Cold War. The U.S. Army had a huge problem. They were building these incredible new fighting vehicles, like the M1 Abrams tank, but they had this one critical weakness. They had no good way to get them to the fight quickly. This was called the airlift gap. Now, at the time, the Air Force basically had two choices, and neither was perfect. On one side, you had the legendary C-130 Hercules, an amazing plane that could land just about anywhere. The problem? It was way too small to carry the Army's new heavy hitters. Then you had the C-5 Galaxy, an absolute giant that could haul multiple tanks, but it was kind of a diva. It needed a huge, perfectly paved runway, which, you don't find too often near the front lines. So you had a choice, tactical flexibility or strategic muscle. You couldn't get both in the same aircraft. So, what do you do when you're faced with an impossible choice like that? Well, the Air Force launched a new program called CX, and the goal was, honestly, audacious. They wanted to create a single aircraft that could do what no other plane could, combine the brute strength of that C-5 with the get-in-anywhere agility of the C-130. And the whole idea behind this new plane boiled down to a concept called direct delivery. Now, this wasn't just a small upgrade. This was a total revolution in military logistics. I mean, think about it. Flying a 65-ton tank from a base in the U.S., crossing an entire ocean, and then landing it on some short dirt strip right next to the action. No more waiting at big airports, no more complicated transfers, just point-to-point delivery of serious combat power. And this chart, wow, this really spells out the strategic genius of the whole thing. Just look at these numbers. For a plane like the C-5 that needs a big standard runway, you had less than 900 options in the non-communist world at the time. Okay, but for a plane that could handle a small, rough airfield, that number just explodes to over 10,000. This one single capability would literally open up the entire globe in a way that was it was unprecedented. And this right here, this is what it was all about. When you hear the term outsized cargo, this is exactly it. The entire plane was literally designed around the shape and the incredible weight of the M1 Abrams tank. This picture just says it all. Get this beast anywhere on the planet and get it there fast. But, having a revolutionary idea on paper is one thing. Actually building it is a completely different story. The C-17 was about to enter a decade-long political and financial nightmare that would almost kill it before the first one was even built. From the very beginning, this thing faced intense skepticism. I mean, you had powerful critics in Congress, like Senator William Proxmire, who didn't see these new ideas as visionary. They saw them as a giant waste of money. This quote just perfectly captures the political headwind the C-17 was flying into from day one. And this timeline really gives you a feel for just how agonizing the progress was. So get this, McDonnell Douglas wins the contract in 1981. But there's no money. They won the right to build an unfunded airplane. For years, the debate in Washington wasn't about how to build it, but if they should build it at all. Then, when they finally get a tiny bit of funding, the technical problems start piling up, especially with the plane's weight, which threatened the very performance that made it special in the first place. So the C-17 wasn't just fighting physics, it was fighting a two-front war. On one side, you had all the technical challenges. And on the other, you had these established giants like Lockheed and Boeing, who had powerful friends in Congress and, existing production lines to protect. Their argument was simple. Why build this new, risky, expensive thing? It'd be so much cheaper just to buy more of our planes, more C-5s, or maybe some modified 747s. And all of this came to a boiling point in the early 1990s. The Cold War was ending, the defense budget was shrinking, and the C-17 program was just bleeding money. The plane was well and truly on the chopping block, on the absolute brink of being canceled for good. And this wasn't just some rumor. This was a direct public warning from a really powerful congressman, John Murtha. He was basically telling the Air Force in no uncertain terms, hey, the political will to keep this thing alive is disappearing fast. The program was in mortal danger. And this data right here shows you exactly why the program was in so much trouble. Just look at this. In only 3 years, the total number of planes they planned to buy was cut almost in half, from 210 down to 120. At the same time, the price for each plane almost doubled. Now, for politicians, this is a death spiral. You're getting fewer planes for way more money. That's the kind of math that makes lawmakers see red and start sharpening their budget axes. Yeah, and it just kept getting worse. The program was put on official probation by the Secretary of Defense himself. And then came Airplane Gate, a whole scandal where Congress accused the Air Force of basically paying McDonnell Douglas for work that was late and wasn't even done right. It was a technical disaster, a financial disaster, and now an ethical disaster. But then, the story takes a turn. After surviving cancellation by the skin of its teeth, the C-17 finally got its chance to fly, to perform, and to prove every single one of its critics completely and totally wrong. This number is the turning point. In 1995, the Air Force ran this brutal make-or-break evaluation to see if this troubled plane could actually do what was promised. And the result? A stunning 99.2% launch reliability rate. The thing just worked. Despite all the drama and delays, the engineering underneath it all was solid. And this incredible performance just silenced so many of the loudest critics. And this is what it was all for. This is the payoff. On the left, you see the pure power to swallow an M1 Abrams tank hole. And on the right, the incredible finesse to land on a dusty, unprepared strip in the middle of nowhere. For the very first time, one single aircraft could do both. The revolutionary promise that was made on paper decades ago was finally a reality. And it immediately started proving its worth in the real world. In Bosnia, it delivered these massive bridge sections when literally nothing else could get the job done. In Kosovo, it became the main workhorse, flying heavy tanks into a tiny airfield in Albania that was totally off-limits to other big cargo planes. And get this, in Sarajevo, a cruise stunned Allied French forces by offloading a massive 154,000-pound cargo load and taking off again in just 31 minutes. But this mission in 2003, this was the ultimate proof, the ultimate vindication. U.S. forces were denied access through Turkey to open a northern front in Iraq. So what happened? A fleet of C-17s made it possible anyway. They flew over 1,000 paratroopers directly from Europe and dropped them to seize a key airfield. That right there is direct delivery in action. That crazy idea from the 1970s had just changed the course of a modern war. And that brings us right up to today. From its incredibly troubled, near-death beginnings, the C-17 Globemaster has become the absolute cornerstone of American and Allied power projection around the world. It's an indispensable tool for both fighting wars and for delivering humanitarian aid, a real testament to an idea that was simply too good to let die. When you look back, the C-17 story really proves that the most revolutionary ideas often face the fiercest resistance. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What game-changing technologies right now are being dismissed as too expensive or too complex? What future innovations are out there fighting your own quiet battles for survival, just waiting for their chance to finally prove everyone wrong?